So if you're seeing this video, it's likely that you're in the market for a new furnace. We put together the ultimate furnace buying guide to help walk you through some of the information you'll need to know. We hope that you enjoy it, and if you have any questions, definitely reach out to us. So we're going to talk today about the major components of a furnace, just to help familiarize a typical homeowner with the typical furnace. This is a typical furnace in a home that is relatively new. It's probably about 5 years old. I'm going to start with the filter though. So this is a typical filter that's in a furnace, and it's often a 1-inch filter. One of the things I wanted to point out, that in order to save yourself time, money, and ensure better comfort and efficiency, change this filter more often. Often customers are probably changing it maybe every 6 to 12 months. These 1-inch filters really should be changed probably every 6 weeks to 2 months. Even sooner if you have negative environmental sort of things going on, lots of cats and dogs, dust in the air, those sorts of things. Most people forget that if you don't change this, or if they change this filter once a year, they think that's good enough. The reality is they need to change it more often. So now we'll move into some of the major components of a furnace, just to understand what you're looking at, especially if you're trying to understand what's going on. So what you'll see down in this area here, this is the combustion components, and this is the blower components. And what's really happening is when the thermostat goes on, calls for heat, what will happen is it'll send a signal to this board. This is the electronic board. Now you'll notice that sometimes this board can get a little dusty, and that's effectively because dust is flowing through this filter at a higher or lower rate, and if that dust gets coated onto this board, you may find that you're having issues in that board. That board controls the rest of the furnace when components go on and off, and it's all driven by the thermostat, whether there's power to it or not. So when the power gets connected to this and the board controls the furnace, what's happening is it starts up this component here. This component is called a venter motor or an inducer motor, and this is basically designed to pull in air from the outside. As you can see here, it's an open air vent, pulls the air into the combustion chamber. That also pushes the air, the exhaust air, out through the exhaust venting. So as that starts up, you've got some pressure switches here. Now these pressure switches are going to determine whether or not everything's operational. If everything's hunky-dory, everything's great, it'll allow the furnace to effectively start an ignition sequence. Now that ignition sequence, what's happening is there's a little igniter inside here, and it'll glow often with this type of furnace. It'll glow, and a few seconds later you'll hear a click, and this gas valve will allow gas to flow through here into the furnace. That igniter, because it's on, it'll ignite the gas. That's the intention of it. So gas will start flowing, start burning. There's also another component inside here called a flame sensor, and that flame sensor is intended to sense the flame. If it doesn't sense the flame, it's a safety procedure where it'll shut it off. Again, everything's connected back through the wiring to the board, and the board is what sends power to all of these components. So if that flame sensor is sensing flame, everything's great. Often that's a fundamental problem in the furnace where that flame sensor has failed and the furnace won't start up. So once this furnace is burning and heating up, the gas is burning rather, and everything's heating up nicely, what will happen is that board will turn on the blower motor, and the blower motor clearly is what's pulling air in through this section here. This is called your return air drop, through your filter, and then up through the furnace. And the furnace inside there, the air is being pushed up inside, across the heat exchanger, through the plenum here, and it's warming up the air in this case. So if you're having issues with no airflow or lack of airflow, it could be a reason that's related to the blower motor itself. As that furnace then reaches temperature in the home, the thermostat will say, okay, I'm good, I'm going to shut off now. What will happen is the thermostat stops sending a signal to the board. The board then reverses that process so that the flame shuts off. It'll continue to blow for a while the heat dissipates through the system. Once it's low enough temperature, the blower may shut off. Now it doesn't always shut off if you've had a setting turned on your thermostat or a summer switch where the blower will continue to circulate air. It really depends on your setup. At that point, if everything's good, the furnace will shut down and then the cycle starts again. So you'll notice while I've been talking about this, the door is off. That's clearly so that I can show you this operation. I don't normally recommend you take the doors off unless you have a qualified technician inspect it. If you do have to, for any reason, take the doors off, I'd recommend that you shut the power off to the furnace so that you don't have anything to worry about. But effectively, these doors should always be in place, and you should not be operating this furnace without the doors on.